So, good evening, everyone. I'm David Dawson, Director of the Museum, and Nicola, if you introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicola Trow and I am the Programme Manager for the Assizes for Devizes project here at Wiltshire Museum.
Okay. So, we're going to give you a quick briefing as to where we are with the project. The reason is that we're going to be submitting our planning application to Wiltshire Council, and we thought now was a really good time just to bring everyone up to speed with what's been happening with the project and where we are. So just as a bit of a recap, I'm sure most of you, if not everyone on the call will know this, we've been working with the Devizes Assize Court Trust, completely separate charity, set up to buy and look after the building. And we then will be taking out a long-term lease and paying a peppercorn rent for the building, and we are leading the project, which will include bids to the National Lottery Heritage Fund and other funders to make the project a reality. So that's the overall basics. And just to emphasize that, this is where we are with the project. So after the lottery closed down for COVID, they reopened. We had a successful expression of interest, which was an 800-word application, and were allowed to proceed to put in a development stage application. The way they work is that they provide funding to essentially get to the point where you've got planning permission, you've got a really good idea of how you're going to use the building, and most importantly for them, you've taken the risk out of the project. So we had the result of that application in June, though we didn't actually have formal permission to start until September, which is a bit of a challenge. And then we have 2 years to work on the project, get planning permission, and to take it from there. So that's where we are at the moment. So Nicola, over to you.
Brilliant. So as David says, we're now in what's called the development phase of the project. And would you know, it's the time for us to develop our plans. But we have started getting the ball rolling pretty quickly. So back in when we got heard we got the money in June 2023, we started about thinking, what do we need for this phase of the project? And the first thing we really needed was more staff. So we got to work and have now appointed a project team. So we now have 4 members of staff, including myself, working on the project full time, which is a marked improvement from when it was just me and David working on the project in our spare bits of time. So that's been really good. So my colleague Claire, who is our project engagement officer, Helen, who is our project support officer, and Friday, who is our project assistant. And they do a variety of jobs in across the project and just in supporting the museum. But a lot of their role is involving going out and talking to people, getting people involved in the project. And I'll speak a little bit more about what they've been up to in a minute. But we couldn't do this alone. So the other job we got started quite quickly was to appoint a wide-ranging expert consultant team. So this includes our architects per cell, who have worked with us and the Devizes Assize Court Trust for a couple of years now, working on getting to this stage of the project. We have also now appointed exhibition designers called image makers, who I'll speak a little bit more about in a while. We also have a fundraising consultant on board to help us with a rather large fundraising target that we have for the project. And we have other consultants working with us, such as evaluation consultants, who are helping us to figure out exactly what we want to achieve from the project, what are our aims, and more importantly, what is the legacy that we really want to embed in the project as we go forwards. So once we got our team in place, then we really got out and started getting to work quite quickly. So since our project team have been in place since November, we've spoken with over 1,200 people, which I think is an amazing statistic, actually, particularly with sort of Christmas in the way and everything else going on. It's amazing that we've spoken to so many people. So this includes people at events. We've been to focus groups, advisory groups, projects we've been running, anything where we've been speaking to people about the project, getting feedback, getting views. and really then putting all of that feedback together and feeding that back onto our design team, so that's incorporated into the plans that we're making. And then on the slightly less interesting side, well, if you ask me, might interest some people, we've also been doing lots of surveys on the Assizes Court building. So we've had things like a lead paint survey, we've been doing a drainage survey, bats, you name it, we've looked into it now. And the point really of doing all these surveys at this point in the project is to make sure, one, that we don't have too many unexpected surprises in the next phase when the architects and the contractors actually get into the building. I'm sure there still will be some unexpected surprises that we haven't foreseen, but it also, what we want is to make sure we know what we're going into, we have an idea of everything around the building, and most importantly, we know roughly where the costs are going to be, which is going to be an interesting, but those surveys have been particularly useful in piecing together the next phase and where our architects really need to focus. So coupled with that, we have submitted a pre-app to Wiltshire Council for planning, and this is mostly to get a steer on our plans so far and where we perhaps need to focus in more detail for the planning application as well. And then the more exciting side is that we've been developing the actual architectural plans for the building, which David's going to talk about in a lot more detail in a minute. But this has been such a great process of working with Purcell and their design team. They've had structural engineers, mechanical engineers, cost consultants all working together to really bring our vision to life. And what we're just starting to look at now is the exhibition and interpretation design. So we've been working with image makers to look at what stories and themes we want to tell in the museum. And we're going to be getting on to actually looking at what those new galleries will look like, what's the themes in each different room, and how we really bring Wiltshire's amazing stories to life. And then the slightly scary aspect of the project, which is also looking at costs. So we have a rough idea of the costs of the project when we submitted the first round application, but doing all this work of more detailed plans and all of the surveys we've been doing it is allowing us to really narrow down and focus on what those costs are and get a really robust budget for the next application to the lottery fund, which is rather important. Next slide, please. So where have we been going in the community? So my colleague Claire in particular, I asked her for a long list of how many groups she had spoken to, and the list went on about 5 more pages than this, so I had to cut it off. But this is just a snapshot of some of the groups we've been working with and talking to. People like Alzheimer's Support Wiltshire, Spurgeon's Children's Centre, Devizes and District Food Bank, and some of the universities as well. And also on this list are various advisory groups that we've set up. So we have a youth advisory group, a community advisory group, an access group, and we have just set up a teachers group as well. And they met, I think it was on Monday. And these groups have been meeting quite regularly, the first 3 over the last 6 months or so, working with the team on different aspects of the plan, giving their thoughts, feedback based on their lived experience and their thoughts. And what's been really lovely is all that feedback has been then taken by the staff team and passed on to the consultants. And you can really see how those thoughts and ideas have begun to shape the plans going forward. And we've had some really lovely feedback from these groups where people say that they feel really engaged with the project and really feel like we've been listening to their thoughts and opinions, which has been really nice to hear. And it's something that we really passionate about in this project, and we want to keep taking forward, is that this is a project that's led by the museum, but it is for the whole community. It's for local people of all different groups that want to come visit. It's for tourists, international tourists. We want everyone to feel that they are welcome in the museum and that they have some sort of relevance to it as well. Next slide, please. So also, apart from just talking to people, we've also been testing out some projects and ideas of what we can do to engage different audiences with the new museum as well. So we have a Bath College student with us at the moment who has designed a 3D model of what the Assize Court will look like with the sort of extensions and refilled bits in that David will talk about in a bit. And they have now transferred this into virtual reality, which slightly goes over my head, but it's amazing. And what we're going to be able to do is soon start taking this out to groups, and you'll be able to, with some goggles or with your own phone, be able to put on and see what it'd be like to walk through the new museum. So this is something that as we get the gallery designs in as well, we can update to get even further. And I think it's going to be a really good project and thing to take out to younger people in the community as well and get them excited about the project. Great, next slide, please. And so this is Claire in action. So these are just some of the groups we've been working with and some of the pilot projects we've been testing out. So that's on the left is Claire speaking to members of Alzheimer's support and doing a test sort of Alzheimer's memory tour, and looking at how we can use handling objects and how we can make sure that the new galleries sort of include different sensory objects and potential access issues that may come up that we can look at as well. And then we've been doing other projects. We've been working with the Youth Justice team on designing a street art project and looking at how we might be able to do some more sort of street art graffiti style aspects into the new site. And the bottom right is with Devizes Public Living Room. And I think Linny is in the audience tonight, actually. But we've been working with the Public Living Room on a project which is probably one of my favorite we've been doing, which is, I think the logo, the phrase for Devizes Public Living Room is "life is a bit pants sometimes." But what they really wanted to do is a project that showed that life might be a bit pants, but Devizes is not. So the idea is that for the Devizes Carnival, they have created a giant pair of pants and designed everything that they love about Devizes on it. And we're going to parade the giant set of pants down the carnival. So do look out for that, because I'm very excited for the giant pants. Great. And I think that's me done for a bit, David.
Okay, thanks, Nicola. I'm now going to we'll change a bit to focus, and I'll start to talk about the plans we have for the building. And we've got some nice visuals here. So this is a visual of the front of the building, as we hope it will be. But I think it's really quite interesting because it gives me a chance to just talk about one of the many issues we've been grappling with the help of the architects. So one particular issue is that obviously for the building there's a flight of steps to approach the building, which is not great for many people, and so we need a sloping entrance, or otherwise known as a ramp. Now, one problem is that there's not the space to get pushchairs, buggies, mobility scooters or wheelchairs between the pillar here and the wall of the Assize Court. It's just too narrow. That means we have to bring the sloping entrance in front of the column. This was the initial design that the architects had, but that would have meant we had to reduce the width of the stairs to give this platform to allow turning, and also it really detracts from the building. So a bit more head scratching, and we end up with this, which looks similar but is actually quite different. So you remember from the previous drawing, I'll just go back to that, is you have the stairs are just contained here, and there are flat bits on each side. The solution is to bring the steps out more widely, which then gives space to bring the sloping entrance up here and then to turn around the front here. So instead of trying to do that turn here, we bring it outside the pillars. This isn't quite the final design because we will obviously need some sort of railing here to ensure that people don't end up going down the stairs. But you can see how that means that the columns start to sing and it looks much more impressive. Also, we have certain budget considerations, so we can't afford to have both of the ramps in place. So one of them will be a bit of a dummy, I'm afraid, until we can raise the cash to have a second one. But this one makes the building sort of sing, and it really really works. So this is the view of the building that will actually go into the planning application, and you can see how that works here. But the previous drawings show, if you like, show the working. But a key part of the building is how to make the circulation work. The two courtrooms, which are here and here, we are going to have to floor in. We wanted at least one to keep to the full double height, but that's just not feasible. But also we're then going to be infilling the space between the two courts, which is reinstating a building that was originally there. And then on the side, we'll be again reinstating a part of the building that was there previously. And I think this view gives a real indication of how the back of the building will work. We're still working on plans for exactly how the landscape design will work. And that's one of the things that will be going into the application. But we love the idea of this sort of square performance space somewhere where tables and chairs can be put out when it's not raining, so you can enjoy the courtyard. And this side view, this is from the side facing towards Wadsworths, shows how that the reinstated building on the side will work. And this will be stairs and lift and space for plant and various other things that we need. And this gives an idea, sort of an architect's view of how the building will appear from the rear, with the three doorways here being the exit, the sort of the way out from the cafe, and these two bits here. This one will be a place to store bins, and this one will be a place to keep buggies and mobility scooters, both of which are clearly important, and we need to keep away from the rest of the courtyard. No one wants to see sort of clutter in a beautiful courtyard, that the space that people can enjoy. And then when we look in detail at the plan of the building, so you can see here the four columns of the entrance at the front. You'll come in through the grand entrance into the entrance hall, and with loos on each side. The room at the front left will be our learning centre. That will be for schools. And then because it has its own separate entrance here, means that it can be used outside normal hours when the rest of the building is locked. It'll have its own loo here as well. Means that this can be used out of hours as a community space, perhaps for things like evening classes or community meetings. Then the space in here, the former size court, it will be the multi-use event space, seating 120 people, theatre style, in comparison with the current lecture room of 70 very friendly people. And we have storage space there for tables and chairs, so everything can be stowed away, and a point there for making for refreshments. Then through here, this is the cafe, leading out to the courtyard at the rear. Then through here into what was essentially the magistrates' court, we have a set of loos, and here this will be our special exhibition gallery. This is where we'll have exhibitions like the Revilius exhibition or our current Wiltshire Thatcher exhibition, which don't forget ends at the end of the month if you haven't been to see it yet. And then the space in the front left, this will be our Discover Devizes gallery, an office here and a storeroom here. So one of the changes that we've implemented over the last couple of months, which I have to say I had to be slightly persuaded about, is that we've decided to reverse the flow of the exhibition galleries that are the display galleries that we'd initially proposed. So we will be taking people up the stairs here or into here. This is a turning circle to the left, up the stairs on into the first floor. And I'll show you that in a moment. So come up to the first floor. We have a fireproof lobby here linking through to some office space. We're still discussing how this will work because it looks a bit inelegant at the moment. And through here will be the main, the beginning of the main exhibition galleries, particularly perhaps the natural environment, Neolithic. There's an accessible loo here on the first floor, and this is where the lift comes. And what you'll see is that if you come up the stairs or if you use the lift, you come to the same starting point for the displays. As Nicola said, this is something we're just about to start work on. So we'll have the Neolithic in this area and then link through to here, which will be the Bronze Age. So this will be the Beaker period, the gold from the time of the Stonehenge, and that will have pride of place. And at the back here, there'll be ways of seeing out to the courtyard at the back. So people will be able to know where they're orientated within the building. Then they'll come through here to this space. This will then cover the rest of archaeology. So Iron Age, Roman, Saxon, with probably a meeting space at the top here and potentially a plant room, and then exiting here to a set of stairs going down and a second lift. And something that's very important from the feedback is that the people were very keen, really thought it very important that everyone follows the same route through the exhibition galleries, whether they're going up the stairs or whether they're using a lift. And this will enable that to happen by having two lifts, which is a bit more expensive, but it also means that if we have technical problems, which is inevitable at some point or other, then we can continue to maintain access to the first floor, which is obviously really important. So people then go down the stairs, down in the lift to the ground floor, and they follow through here to the Discover Devizes gallery before exiting to the shop and having a well-earned cup of tea en route. Anything, Nicola? Anything I've forgotten?
I don't think so.
Not yet, anyway. The other thing that we've also been able to commission is some imaginative views of what the building will look like when it's in use. And I said to the artist I wanted some flags, and boy, have I got flags. The idea was to really emphasize that this will be a welcoming approach, a welcoming building, something to encourage people to come and visit, and we want to make our mark on the street frontage. And this is a view from the rear. The very keen amongst you will spot that it doesn't quite tie up with the architect's plans. That's one of these things about work in progress. But you can see here how we intend the space to be well used, welcoming, place to have tea and coffee. We want a dedicated play area for children and somewhere for everyone to sit and enjoy the space. And then last but not least, apparently the artist who did the watercolors, we asked him only to do those two, but he was so enthusiastic about the project, he did this one for us as well. And this shows a view of the entrance hall. You can see the welcome desk here. This may not be its final position, looking towards the exit from the Discover Devizes gallery and through here with a see-through wall, which I love, into the cafe area there. So that's the basics of how the building will work, and that's the core of the planning application. So we're going to be submitting that application this month to Wiltshire Council. Once it's been registered and checked by the council, it will then be posted onto the planning portal for Wiltshire Council and will be open for public consultation. There'll be lots of very exciting documents for everyone to read, and then it'll go through the process just like any other planning application. And we're hoping that we'll get a decision later in the autumn. One of the key things is that we're hoping that we want to get the planning application in, because this is one of the things that a number of funders want to see before they'll look at grant applications. So it's important to get that process going. So I think, Nicola, now back to you.
So what's next? So as David said right at the beginning, we have 2 years of the development phase. So we're pretty much halfway through at the moment. So the next year, now that we're about to get the planning application in, involves looking ahead a little bit more. So we're still going to be running some more pilot projects to test out. So you'll still see us and our team around the community quite a lot if you're local to Devizes or some of the local towns and villages nearby. But as I mentioned, we're going to be working a lot with our consultants on designing the galleries, what they're going to look like, and really bringing the museum to life in this building that Purcell worked with us to design. On top of that, we have the small job of working towards the next application to the National Lottery Heritage Fund. So the first one we did, I think, was around 700 pages. We didn't tally up at the end because we were too exhausted. But this one is likely to be even longer, and it involves creating a wide range of documents. So Claire, who's been leading on our sort of outreach and engagement, all of the work she's been doing, all of what she's been speaking to people about, and some of the pilot projects she's been testing will go into what's called an activity plan, which will run from 2026 to 2031. And that is a plan of all the events, activities, workshops, hard hat tours, conferences, you name it, any sort of event or activity that we want to run, either to sort of bring along audiences in our journey while the new museum is still being built, to test out things that we want to try in the new museum that might bring in different audiences to the museum. And then in 2030, 2031, when we hopefully open the new museum, then it's looking at running activities and seeing what works in the new space, and working very closely with our business plan to make sure that what we develop is a sustainable and financially sustainable model for the new museum as well. And these are just a few of the documents. I think we've got about 22 different documents, from conservation management plans and management and maintenance plans to do as well. So it's all about preparing as much documentation as possible to show the Heritage Fund that this is it's an inclusive, welcoming scheme, but it's also financially viable and a good move for the museum that will mean that we are more sustainable in the long run, and that we've also, in the same time, restored this wonderful building and gave it a use and brought it back into the community. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we're working with image makers on starting the gallery designs at the moment. So these are some really early work they've been doing. So it won't likely look like this, but we're certainly working towards having some sort of potentially white horse or some sort of sculpture, big piece hanging from the atrium as you walk in, which I think will be a real wow factor as people come into the museum. And then on the right, there's just some ideas of what might be in the Discovered Devizes gallery and our Bronze Age collection as well. And if I can have the next slide, please. But you will be able to see a lot more about these designs very soon. So we're working on them at the moment with the designers, but they will be on display as part of an ideas exhibition we're doing for the project. So this exhibition is going to run from the 7th to the 22nd of September at the museum. It's going to be free entry and linked to Heritage Open Days that we're running. And the exhibition is telling the story of the project so far. It's giving a bit more background to the Assize Court, and you can find out a little bit more about the history, as particularly of crime and punishment that was going on there. So there's some very amazing stories that were linked to the Assize Court when it was in use. And it's going to be quite an interactive exhibition, so you'll be able to look at all the new designs and potentials we have for the galleries, rank your designs and submit them to us, and all of that feedback will come back to the consultants, and we'll have another iteration of designs from that. So most of it's been designed by our project assistant Friday, who's been doing a great job to put it all together. So please do come along and see what we've been up to. I think that's me done, David.
Yeah. So then the obvious question is, what next? So we're working on what will be the application to the National Lottery Fund, which we'll be putting in just about a year's time. Can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to that, at least to it being finished. And we also have to do the odd bit of fundraising before then. So the priority at the moment is on trusts and foundations, major donors, because we have to have most of the money committed by time we put by the time we put the bid in. We've got a couple of months grace because they really need to know that the money is there at the point when they're taking the decision as to whether or not to fund the project. So we would hope to get the answer at the end, well, we say autumn there, it's probably winter 2025. And then it takes a bit of time before then that can be approved. And so we're probably looking at the very beginning of 2026 for it to be announced whether we've been successful or not. Although you might hear the shout from the other side of Devizes when we hear the result. In terms of when building work might start, that would be at the back end of 2026, because there's more design work has to be done and tenders written and contractors procured, all of which takes time. So building work starting in 2026, 18 months, so they tell us, for the building work, let's say 2 years. Then we have to install the displays and just do the minor thing of moving the objects and installing the objects, all of which is highly specialized, thanks to our wonderful team and especially Lisa, our curator. And then so that dictates at what point we can open, which at the moment we're planning on 2030, but we'll see how that works out. So that's the plan. In the meantime, we, as I say, during that time, we'll be launching a major public fundraising campaign, because I'm sure we won't have raised all the money we need. And so we'll really need your help at that point. However, in the meantime, if you're feeling enthusiastic, there are a number of ways that you can support the project. Because the museum itself, we're currently investing at least £30,000 a year into making the project work, and that's direct cash as opposed to all the staff time we're putting in. So if you're not already a member, you could join the museum, and you can go to the website, and under support us, you'll see there's membership. If you're already a member, you might wish to consider becoming a donor member. So we have various tiers where people commit to giving different amounts, and perhaps you might be able to give a little more. That would be wonderful. A small group of people have been incredibly generous and have committed to being members of the DACT 22. That's 22 people who are giving £2,000 a year for 5 years. And that's to pay the ongoing costs and repairs for the building, to keep it standing while we're waiting for essentially the Heritage Fund to make the decision and for us to be able to go ahead with the project. You could consider leaving us a legacy as well. Hopefully we won't be seeing that for a long time yet, but that will really help build the long-term future in the museum. And if you happen to have or know someone who has a little bit of spare cash, a large wallet that needs emptying, just let us know, because I'm sure we can help them with that. So I think that's everything I wanted to say. Is there anything you wanted to say, Nicola, or shall we hand over for questions?
No, I think that's fine. It's just a big thank you to everyone's support and enthusiasm for the project so far, because I'd say the same for, I think, everyone in the museum. You can't go into town or anywhere without people asking about the project, and it's lovely to hear how positive everyone is about what the work we're doing at the moment.
Yeah. The reason you may have heard me say earlier, the reason we started this talk at 8 is that I was talking to the town council at 7, and they were really enthusiastic, very pleased to hear about how the project is sort of going for the planning application. So I'll stop sharing at that point, and I'm pleased to see we got 7 questions already. We'll try and answer. So let me bring them up. So Elizabeth has asked if there's any connection with prisons and resettlement. So she's picked up that we worked with the youth justice team. Nicola, perhaps you might want to say a bit more about that. We have worked with Ulstoke Prison in the past. We've done a number of workshops actually in the prison talking about archaeology. But interestingly, we got you may have seen that Wessex Archaeology did a project, a series of excavations actually inside the prison, and we're going to be hosting a display about that in our long room later in the autumn, so that's coming soon. So Nicola, could you say a word or two about the Youth Justice Team project?
Yeah. So we've been working with the Youth Justice Team for a couple of years now on projects linked to just the museum, the Assize Court, and generally just about working with members of the team, doing projects within the museum where they feel it's a comfortable, safe space, and designing some really cool stuff, really. So we've done some, I think last year we did some graffiti work that was outside the Assize Court for quite a long time. And this year, the young people designed some street art for a couple of local businesses. And the museum now has its own very cool graffitied Wiltshire Museum sign, which is on display in the museum. So we're going to be talking to the team and looking at how we can incorporate maybe some creative work onto designing in the new building, whether it's, I don't know, just an idea of whether on the ramp we can have some cool street art, or there's other elements we can do as well.
Yeah. And just to add, because of the individuals that are vulnerable and need support to be able to come to the museum, it's not something we can just sort of make happen with a drop of a hat. We're looking to try and run that a similar project again next year. And also we've got our Oxman exhibition coming up, which many of you will know. It's an open art competition, and we've sent art materials to the young people who we were working with, and encouraging them to apply, to submit a work for the competition. So we're looking forward to seeing those. Next, Elizabeth and Tim have asked, and Andrew have asked more or less the same question, which is, how does the floor area for displays compare with the current museum? Which embarrasses me slightly because we still haven't actually calculated, have we?
I can't remember the calculation off the top of my head, but it is more in the new building.
It's something like 10% more. But the key, there's a couple of things. One is that although and we always want to show more and tell more, many people spend 2 or 3 hours going around the museum, and doubling the floor space wouldn't mean they'd spend 4 hours here. So there's that sort of trade-off. And in some areas, we essentially already have out the objects that are really important and really do tell the story. So, but even more importantly, because the spaces are large and open rather than small domestic rooms, we'll be able to use the space much more effectively. So Elizabeth says, looks absolutely great. Hope I'm still around when it opens. So do I. I hope I'm still around too. Penny has said, is the shop in the welcome hall? To which the answer is yes. We haven't scoped out exactly how the shop and the welcome desk are going to work. One of the reasons for it being sited on the right-hand side is so that to give enough space behind the desk so that someone who's in a wheelchair can get in, can use that space effectively without taking up large amounts of space in the middle of the room. So that's the plan. Though we may well, it's going to be quite difficult to use because there's so many doors coming off it. So we'll also be thinking about how we can use space in the cafe, perhaps more space in the cafe, to support the shop as well. So that's that one. It's that one. So I've got a little system behind the scenes to tick all the questions off. Elizabeth has said, what about the storage of objects not on display? And Tom has asked, what's the plan for the library? So we can answer those two together, which is that the building at the moment, the current museum, we have 1.4 kilometers of shelving in the building, with all sorts of collections, everything through from the library and archive through to very exciting pot, bone and stone, archaeological finds in the cellars, as well as some rather more wonderful things as well. So there isn't space for that in the Assize Court, as you'll have seen. When we were starting on the project, we were thinking we would create a basement space and have more gallery space in an extension out the back. That would cost at least 25 million, even when at the point when we were looking at that, and it's just not viable. So we'll keep the existing building or bits of it, and we'll create a collections discovery centre there, and probably keep some admin offices there to make the maximum use we can of the public spaces in the Assize Court. Just trying to tick those off. Done that one, sort of. And Tom has said, what's the plan for the library? And just to clarify, just to be absolutely clear, that means that the library will stay on the current site. Not necessarily in the same building. It may physically move, but it will be on the current site. Chris has asked what the rationale is for reversing the order of flow on the first floor galleries. I've done a lot of talking. Nicola, would you like to do that one? Especially as you had to persuade me.
It was a lot of it's to do with telling the interpretation stories. So quite a lot of people say with our galleries at the moment, it is quite disconcerting starting in the Roman gallery and nothing is chronological. And if we had not reversed the circulation, gone the other way, you would have started in the Discovered Devizes gallery. And then we were looking at a way to sort of throw you back in time and go back through prehistory, starting again back in the Paleolithic and then going forward again. So there are quite a few sort of different time working outs there. While if we reverse the circulation, you start in sort of the natural environment, Paleolithic, and go chronologically through and end up in the Discovered Devizes gallery. Which in terms of telling a story is quite a nice way to do it, and also people ending in Discovered Devizes and sort of telling people to go out and now explore the town, explore the local landscape as well, works quite nicely. Another reason is, and this is what the gallery designer said to me, and it really sold it to me, was the Bronze Age gold, which quite a lot of people described as the core, the heart of our collection, would then be in the center of the building. So it's almost like it's at the heart of the building and at the heart of the collections, which I think is a really nice sort of symbolism through it as well. There are some issues obviously around if we go up, it's sort of managing different groups all coming in through the same building, but we think with management and sort of working out when people come in, that won't be a huge issue. So I think there were some pros and cons to both ways, but I think being able to tell that story all the way through is a really lovely thing to be able to do.
I needed a bit of persuasion because sort of getting people to go upstairs first, I think, could be a bit of a challenge, but I was persuaded that actually it is the most sensible way. It certainly works much better for putting the Bronze Age collection, the Stayhead collection at the heart of the museum. And also it means that people will follow through chronologically, which is a real problem with the current building, the current displays. So Claire has said, when do you anticipate the Long Street galleries will close? Good question. And there are two answers to that. One is we don't have a clue yet. The other is that one of the interesting things is because we've got special exhibition gallery here in Long Street, we could potentially keep that running, that open all the way, pretty well all the way through until we close until we open at the Assize Court. We could have a sort of long-term special exhibition of art or whatever. I'm not saying we will, it's just we could. So I'm sort of imagining the galleries will close from, let's say, the part of, say, 2028, possibly, certainly 2029. Because one of the things we'll have to do is once the building work has been done, we have to let all the plaster dry out and make sure that the environment is stable before we start moving collections. So you've got to make sure the building is stable, it's fully dried out. Then you install cases and graphics, and then you install the objects. And that's not something that happens quickly. It has to be done very carefully. As Lisa will be able to tell you, because I'm never allowed near the objects. She does it so well. So that's sort of the outline plan at the moment. Mike has said, how far will the original interior be retained? That's a challenging question because, in fact, for the vast majority of the building, there's nothing left. So the learning centre, which is pretty well intact, that will be retained as is and restored. And the other main area is the entrance hall. Now, the ceiling of the entrance hall is currently propped up by scaffolding, which is a nightmare, and it is hanging off the roof beams, which have been overloaded by having large panes of glass put on in the 1880s as roof lights. So the whole thing is in a really bad state, and the whole of the ceiling will have to be taken down. Moldings will be taken, and it will be reinstated from new with a brand new supporting framework to relieve the stresses on the roof timbers. So we'll do what we can. And the other thing that will be kept one way or another are the judges' thrones, where there's enough bits left, but really pretty well that's about it. So we'll keep what we can, but there's so little left. Most of it will just be essentially a white box. Tim has asked, have you done an asbestos survey? In fact, that was the first thing that the Assize Court Trust did when they took over the building. They had an asbestos survey done and spent £40,000 on having all the asbestos removed. There are a few bits buried in amongst builders' rubble in various places, but all the rest of the asbestos has been removed. Something that is quite unpleasant, though, Nicola mentioned the lead paint survey. There's lots of lead paint around, particularly in the dust that's everywhere. So we now have to wear masks and foot coverings and gloves if we're going to be doing anything in the building. Thankfully, the architectural team had assumed that, so had taken into account having to line the walls and deal with that. So it's not impacted on the costs. Then Penny, perhaps Nicola, if you can answer this one. Penny's asked about whether there'll be a separate till for the entry and shop, and the cafe have its own payment area.
Oh, yes, likely, because the cafe will be able to, people will come and visit the cafe, won't necessarily be visiting the museum, so they will be separate entrance there. We're also looking at whether we can potentially do a separate entry for example, the temporary exhibition gallery. So it gives us that option, with that gallery being slightly separate, that we can also charge separately for that. But the shop and main entrance will be for the whole of the museum in that area.
Amanda has asked, is there a plan for ongoing works to keep the building from disintegration? Do you want to answer that one as well, Nicola? You've taken on the task of writing the building, the conservation plan or maintenance plan.
Yeah, so at the moment, the Devizes Assizes Court Trust is keeping an eye on the building to make sure it doesn't fall into worse repair. But we will work with the architects and special advisors to make sure that whilst the museum is occupying the building, that we also make sure that it's maintained. So the Heritage Fund require lots and lots of detail about how we will look after different aspects of the building and make sure we cost everything in that as well. So at the moment, we're doing our best to keep it from further disrepair. And as David mentioned in one of the other slides, that supporters of the Devizes Assizes Court Trust are really helping us to keep that building safe and keep it insured as well, which is another cost that goes alongside it. So yes, we will make sure we take good care of it, much better than it has in previous years.
Okay, and two people have asked the rather difficult question of cash. What's the current estimate, and how much do we need to raise to secure lottery funding, which is sort of the same question but different. Yeah, it's a little difficult to answer. I'll get Nicola to give you the exact the numbers, because as we've explained, we're just starting to scope out the interpretation. By what that means is display cases, graphic panels. We need to work out how many staff we need in the new building, sort of all sorts of other costs like that. But we do have some pretty accurate costs for the building work, though we don't have accurate costs for those other bits. So it's still work in progress.
So we imagine, we think that it's going to come around somewhere between 13 to 14 million overall.
Which is scary. We're hoping that the lottery will kick in 8 million. So that leaves 4 to 5 million to raise, which is a challenge, but there's no alternative. Slightly more fun question. Oh no, I'll answer Mike's first, and then we can have the fun ones. Has the Georgian group been consulted? The answer is not yet, not in a formal sense. That will come when the planning application goes in, particularly listed building consent, which we will go in later. It won't go in just yet. Both the Georgian Society and the Victorian Society have been sort of kept informed about progress with the project. And we submitted a pre-app to Historic England at the same time as we submitted one to his Warwickshire Council, and we're told we should get that next week. But well, we hope that's the case. It's been a while, but so the Historic England have been kept informed of what we've been doing all the way throughout. So there's no surprises, we hope. And then I think the last, Mike and Amanda have asked about the cells. Perhaps you could answer that one, Nicola, and then I'll do the one about governance of the organisation.
So we will have some access to the cells via some stairs. Unfortunately, it's going to cost too much more to put a whole lift that will go all the way around, all the way down, which was originally what we'd like to do. And it's something that we will certainly explore doing in a later phase when we come to do more work onto the building. But at the moment, we will have some access, but it will be for special groups, special group tours and whatnot. But it is certainly certainly open to us, and it's something that we will be able to develop and expand on over the years that we inhabit the Assizes Court building.
And then last question at the moment is from Peter. He says, would you say something about the governance of the organisation from 2030? DACT or WANS or joint? Now, we're going to be having a governance review where the tender is out at the moment. So if you want, you can go to the website and read the governance review tender. The way it'll work is that the building is owned by the Assizes Court Trust, and we will sign a lease. When the money turns up, the museum will sign a lease for the building, and which we will then operate. And that will be a peppercorn rent, and the museum will take on that's a full repairing lease. So essentially we look after the building. That's the basic position. You could imagine that perhaps in the fullness of time, it may not be necessary to have two organisations running, but that's not envisaged at the moment. Because we, not surprisingly, the Assizes Court Trust want to ensure that the future of the Assizes Court is secured, no matter what happens to the museum. Now, we could turn around in 20 years' time and say, we've had enough of the Assizes Court, we want to go off to Outer Mongolia. Highly unlikely, but the Assizes Court Trust has to, that's a risk that the Assizes Court Trust needs to manage. Got more questions and comments appearing. Mike says, oh, it's important that when the Georgian group is statutorily consulted, they're supportive indeed. Andrew has said, will the sale of the current building assist with funding the project? We can't sell, we might be able to sell a bit of the current building. Bear in mind, we're 5 buildings knocked into one. But the majority, we have 1.4 kilometers of objects stored in the current building. That doesn't disappear. So at the moment, the plan would be to get the Assizes Court done and dusted, take breathe a huge sigh of relief, and then think about how best to use the current building, the current site, and then to decide what to do. It could be that we sell off one of the 5 chunks for residential use, but that would then pay to upgrade the current buildings, which could do some investment. My colleagues in Dorset use the phrase suboptimal storage, and certainly some of the storage that we have is suboptimal. So we would then be able to reinvest in securing the long-term future of the collections, and possibly ask the Heritage Fund to help with that as well, but then it would provide the match funding. And Amanda has used a one-word question, parking. As you can tell, there's none on site. Unfortunately, that would be wonderful if we had a huge, big car park. There's the Wharf car park not far away and the Station Road car park. So that's where parking would be. And it's worth remembering that years ago, we did a survey to ask people who came to the museum now where they parked. And I worked out the time it took them to walk here. And the average walk time from those car parks to the museum was 7 minutes. The walk time from those same car parks to the Assizes Court was 6 minutes. So that was without any change of behaviour. So it's as simple as that. We are looking at having a single blue badge space, parking space on site at the rear that can be booked. So that would be entirely bookable. And we will be asking the council to convert at least 2 of the parking spaces opposite in front of gauges into blue badge parking spaces, and we'll be asking them as well to put a crossing on the very busy Northgate Street, which I still am amazed there's not a crossing there because of the school as well. That's that one, I hope, from Amanda. And she's also asked, is there anything that could be sorted out with the brewery planning? I think I'll just simply say that's still work in progress. Phew. I think that's it. According to this, that's 27 questions we've answered.
Not too bad. Is that a record?
I think it might be. So, and a few people have voted with their feet. So I think we better sort of think about wrapping up unless there's any last question. We've been going for just over an hour. So any last questions or no? Last chance? No, someone else voted with their feet. So thank you so much for coming. And it's great to hear the questions. It's good, it's really good to know that so many people are so engaged. And do come to the exhibition in September. Don't forget to see the Wiltshire Thatcher exhibition if you haven't already. And thank you for your support. And if you happen to know anyone with a spare million or two, we can help them get rid of it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, and Chris says, thank you and good luck. We need it, don't we?
All the luck
we'll get there. We'll get there.
We've come this far. That's what I always say. This seemed an impossible position in 2020, didn't it? So
yeah,
we've made it here.
We've made it. Yeah. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye. Still there?
You're still recording.